Tonight's tale, Glim-Glim for Monsters, unfolds like an eerie parable, a grim meditation on alienation and misunderstanding the other. In a frozen, post-apocalyptic town, 3 survivors, a father, his daughter, and another man, Carl, grapple with despair in their isolation. An alien, Glim-Glim, inhabits the local library, trying to connect with the humans through technology it simply cannot comprehend. The alien is monstrous in form, yet benevolent in intent. It seeks to save the dwindling survivors, who misinterpret Glim-Glim's presence as malicious. The humans are trapped in a mindset of fear and hostility, and they want to kill the alien. Only through the perspective of the young girl, Amy, does the story hint at a potential for understanding the creature. Amy wants to help the monster out and longs to communicate with it. Sadly, her voice is drowned out by the paranoid adults, who act decisively in their ignorance. Glim-Glim's desperate attempts to communicate with the survivors form the narrative's tragic spine. Using advanced technology and nonverbal cues, Glim-Glim tries to convey his peaceful intentions and offers a cure for the disease afflicting the humans. However, the survivors lack the tools, both intellectually and emotionally, to comprehend the message from Glim-Glim. This communication failure can be analyzed through Jürgen Habermas's theory of communicative action, which emphasizes the need for mutual understanding as a foundation for social cohesion. In Glim-Glim, the absence of shared symbols and language leads to a breakdown of dialogue, resulting in fatal consequences. The humans' refusal to engage in dialogue with the alien mirrors real-world conflicts rooted in cultural and linguistic divides, such as the misunderstandings that exacerbate international relations or intercultural disputes. The young girl Amy, who begins to sense Glim-Glim's benevolence, serves as a glimmer of hope. Her openness to understanding suggests that empathy and curiosity could overcome barriers of difference, a notion supported by Carl Rogers' humanistic psychology, which emphasizes the transformative power of unconditional positive regard. Glim-Glim's death is revealed to be an act of self-sacrifice, a last-ditch attempt to save the last remaining humans from the disease that threatens their lives. The alien is destroyed not because of its nature, but because of the humans' inability to rise above the fear. It reminds me a lot of my own lived experience of being an outsider, as someone who is a trans woman but also likely schizophrenic. While I'm generally docile during psychotic episodes, I'm still very much not able to function or perform like most other people, and the feeling of otherness haunts me even during my best of times. Drawing on Emmanuel Levinas, we can view Glim-Glim as a figure of the other, whose very existence challenges the survivors to confront their ethical responsibilities. Levinas argues that encountering the other imposes a moral demand, a call to recognize their vulnerability and humanity even when their form or action seem alien. Yet the survivors in the story fail to rise to this moral imperative as they're blinded by grief and fear. They project their anguish onto Glim-Glim, transforming him into a scapegoat for the plague that has ravaged their town. If anything, this story highlights the fragility of empathy in the face of fear. Next time you're scared of somebody, second guess yourself. You are probably the monster of this story. At the heart of Glim-Glim is the theme of alienation, both literal and metaphorical. The alien Glim-Glim is physically and culturally isolated, embodying the archetype of the outsider. He represents a being who, despite his advanced intelligence and benevolence, cannot bridge the chasm of mistrust that separates him from humanity. From a sociological perspective, Glim-Glim's plight aligns with Irving Goffman's concept of stigma, wherein physical or cultural differences result in the othering of an individual or group. The survivors project their fear and mistrust onto Glim-Glim simply because he is different, unable to see past his outward monstrosity of being an alien. This mirrors real-world examples of xenophobia, where unfamiliarity breeds hostility, as seen in historical events like the Japanese internment camps during World War II, or contemporary debates around immigration. The physical setting of this story, a frozen, desolate world, further amplifies this alienation. The icy landscapes mirror the emotional coldness and detachment of the human survivors, underscoring the psychological barriers that prevent connection. Their mistrust mirrors humanity's historical tendency to dehumanize the unknown, an instinct that often leads to violence and tragedy. The humans' immediate response to Glim-Glim's alien nature is distrust, despite Glim's clear lack of hostility. This reaction is an example of in-group versus out-group bias, which is a concept extensively studied by Henry Tajfel in the social identity theory. So social identity theory posits that people derive part of their self-concept from the group to which they belong, often leading to the devaluation of outgroups. For the survivors, Glim-Glim is just an outsider. He embodies their collective fear and grief. The cognitive shortcuts that fuel this bias, such as stereotyping and scapegoating, make it very easy to assign blame to Glim-Glim, than to confront the complex realities of the plague killing humans. We see real-world examples of this all the time. For instance, studies from the Syrian refugee crisis reveal how communities often perceive refugees as threats to their cultural and economic stability, despite evidence to the contrary. In the episode, Carl's anger towards the alien highlights the scapegoat theory, which suggests that frustration and aggression are often displaced onto vulnerable targets. The survivors, overwhelmed by their losses and helplessness, channel their rage toward the alien, whose difference makes him an easy target. The characters' responses to Glim-Glim are deeply informed by their unresolved grief. During the real-life pandemic, mortality's salience influence behaviors such as hoarding supplies, spreading conspiracy theories, and targeting certain groups. During COVID, I remember the Asian community facing hate crimes due to the association with the virus. Like the survivors in Glim-Glim, many people sought to assign blame rather than confront the shared vulnerability of the situation. Another real-world issue that this episode brings up is the social psychological term fundamental attribution error, often evident in law enforcement, where officers may interpret suspects' behaviors as indicative of guilt without considering external factors, such as fear or trauma. This misattribution mirrors the survivor's quick assumption that Glim-Glim is a threat based solely on his alien appearance. A key theme in Glim-Glim is the alien's struggle to communicate. Glim-Glim uses human technology and imagery to convey his intentions, yet his messages are misinterpreted by the humans. This mirrors symbolic interactionism, a sociological theory emphasizing the importance of shared symbols and meanings in human interactions. This communication breakdown between Glim-Glim and the survivors recalls historical tragedies, such as the treatment of Native Americans in boarding schools. Indigenous children were punished for speaking their native languages, reinforcing the erasure of cultural understanding. This parallels the survivors' rejection of Glim-Glim's attempts to communicate, highlighting how mistranslation fosters alienation. Amy, the girl, operates at a stage of moral reasoning that values relationships and intentions over rigid rules. This perspective allows her to empathize with Glim-Glim, and this contrasts with the adults who are stuck in a fear-driven, rule-bound worldview. Amy also embodies Carl Jung's child archetype, symbolizing potential renewal and a connection to universal truths. Her bond with Glim-Glim suggests that innocence and openness may offer a path to transcend the biases and fears that cloud adult judgment. Glim-Glim's behavior aligns with Kantian ethics. It prioritizes duty and moral principles over outcomes. Glim-Glim's actions are driven by a sense of responsibility to humanity, regardless of the personal cost. In contrast, the survivor's behavior reflects a more utilitarian mindset, focused on immediate self-preservation rather than broader ethical considerations. Glim-Glim's sacrifice echoes real-world heroes like Father Maximilian Kolbe, who volunteered to die in place of another prisoner at Auschwitz. This act of ultimate altruism reflects Kantian ethics, prioritizing duty and compassion above all else. Similarly, Glim-Glim chooses to save humanity despite their hostility. Doctors Without Borders exemplifies intergroup altruism, where medical professionals risk their lives to treat people in war zones or epidemics. These acts challenge the evolutionary basis of kin selection, suggesting that empathy and moral principles can transcend genetic ties, just as Glim-Glim transcends species barriers to help humans. The episode's Christmas setting underscores its themes of compassion and redemption, while also serving as a critique of humanity's failures to live up to its ideals. Nisha's assertion of the death of God resonates in the survivor's rejection of Glim-Glim's moral appeal. Without a divine moral compass, they flounder in nihilism, rather than creating new values based on shared humanity. This critique can also be seen in how postmodern societies grapple with ethical relativism, often defaulting to tribalism under stress. So as we close, the town lay silent, a brittle frost creeping over the shattered windows and collapsing roofs. The last echoes of the humans' defiance faded into the void, swallowed by the frozen stillness of their ruin. The alien Glim-Glim, a luminous specter, rested lifeless amidst the debris. Inside the desolate library, Amy stood alone. The words she could not say, the truths no one else would hear, lingered in her throat like the taste of ash. She glances at Glim-Glim's strange machinery, its hum silenced forever, and thought of the knowledge lost, an alien song whose melody might have healed their fragile world. Outside, the wind whispered through the streets, scattering snow like fractured stars. The adults clung to the hollow victory, unaware of the cure coursing through their veins, oblivious to the martyr they had made. Life continued, but the cost was immeasurable, each breath carrying the weight of an irrevocable mistake. And as the frost tightened its grip on the ruins, Amy gazed up at the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond the veil of cold and silence, Glim-Glim's people waited, unaware of his sacrifice, or perhaps indifferent to it. The child wondered if they too would misinterpret, if their wrath might one day descend upon a species too blind to see. In that frozen place where life and death entwined like threads in a shattered web, the story ended, not with a scream or a whimper, but a quiet, eternal ache. And to you, dear viewer, amidst the cold truths and fragile warmth of the season, may you find a moment of peace. Have a Merry Christmas, and until next time, stay spooky.